Hey guys, it's Boki here from Gigi's Fabric Shop, home to Juki and Junkies, and in today's video, it's kind of like a part 2 to the first video that I did addressing all of the Juki TL zipper feet. So in that video, I kind of talked about top stitching and all the options and even threw in some other feet that are great for zippers. So in this video today, I'm going to be talking about how to use some of those zipper feet for installation versus top stitching. So let's get into it. So if you haven't watched part 1 of the zipper feet that I talk about for the TL machines, that's going to be in the description below. It'll be the first link that you can find there. So watch that video so you can see all of the feet that I talk about specifically for the TLs. Another thing I want to mention is that the TL machines, they share all the same accessories. So all those feet that I talked about, doesn't matter if you have a 2010, a TL98, a TL2200, QVP Mini, they'll all work across the board. So TLs share all the same feet, excluding the TL like long arms, so long arms don't use these feet. Just keep that in mind in case if you do have a long arm, all right? So in today's video, I'm gonna be talking about some of those zipper feet, specifically the hinged zipper feet, the 3mm, 2.5mm, the adjustable zipper foot. I'm actually going to be talking about the 1/4 inch foot as well, the hinged 1/4 inch foot, which is an optional accessory across the board. And I'm going to be talking about the magnetic seam guide. So these are going to be in the video today, and we'll be talking about how to use those to install zippers, cross-referencing video number 1 about using them for top stitching. So the first thing I want to talk about is those hinged zipper feet, the 2.5mm and the 3mm. Those are fabulous feet. I mean, and we sell them all day long. They're awesome. They're optional accessories for your TLs, and they're specifically used for zippers. And in video 1, I showed you how these get really close to that top stitching, right? So the 2.5mm gets really, really close, and then the 3mm gets more like 1/8 of an inch to the edge of that zipper. So these are great for that, but like, can I use these to install the zippers? And you absolutely can, but the hurdle or the little issue that I have with these is these are incredibly skinny feet. Okay, so think about it. Like the 3mm is 1/8 of an inch, right? So you're getting a foot that in total is probably 1/4 inch wide. It is very narrow. And a lot of the times I'll see people put these feet on their machines and keep them on 24/7 during the entire time of installation in bags. There is barely anything there making contact with the feed dogs, but with your fabric to help regulate those stitches. So I don't like using these type of feet for installing zippers because it doesn't have enough traction for me. And half the time when you're making a bag, they want you to assemble the bag with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, even during the zipper. So now when you use this to assemble a zipper, then you have to make sure you're using something to give you a guide that's an actual 1/4 inch, hence the magnetic seam gauge. And I'm going to show you and demonstrate what I'm talking about so you have that visual. But now you're using too many tools and this is really skinny, and if your bag is really thick and has layers, this is not going to help your stitches out. You want those stitches to be secure, so I like to use the hinged 1/4 inch foot for installation and preparing my zippers. Of course, depends on the pattern. Maybe your goal is to get really, really close to those teeth, okay? And that's when these feet would come in great. But more often than not, when we're making bags and zippers, you're using 1/4 of an inch, so these specific zippers are really nice and wide for that purpose. So I'm going to show you why you would use the hinged little zipper feet, those really skinny zipper feet, to get super close, and how you would have to do that. But just keep in mind that this foot is not made to be on the machine all the time. It's great, it's awesome, it does the trick, but it's not enough to give you consistency and good tension and good defined stitches. So let me show you how you can use it to get really, really close to a zipper. All right, so I have a little piece here and my zipper that I'm going to be using for today's demo, and I have the hinged zipper foot. I believe this is the 3mm that I have right here. This is going to apply to the 3mm and the 2.5mm, the way of using it for installation. So currently on my machine, usually 24/7, I have the hinged zipper foot, or the hinged 1/4 inch foot installed. This is like my favorite foot ever, and I'll be also demonstrating that today. So for installing zippers with something like this, you see that this foot is incredibly skinny, right? So and most times in the patterns, if you use this to install the zipper like this, That's not a 1/4 inch, right? So you're already throwing off the dimensions of your bag because that's 1/8 of an inch. So you're gonna be, your piece, your panel or however, it's gonna be too big for that piece. Now, if I wanted an accurate 1/4 inch, I would use something like the magnetic seam gauge to pop that into place to whatever according seam allowance, maybe it's a 1/4, maybe it's a 1/2, and then I would make my little sandwich for my zippers, my lining, my exterior, and then I would butt it up to the magnetic seam gauge, and as you can see here, there's all this room, right, because the foot doesn't cover that area, right, because it's very skinny. So not to say you couldn't use it, but in a perfect world for me, if I'm going to use a 1/4 inch, I'm going to use the hinged 1/4 inch foot, because at that point, I don't have to use 2 tools, I don't have to think about it, and that's what the pattern's called for. So this would save you some time, but you could do it with this. Another way to do this is like if you purposefully wanted to get very, very close to that zipper. So for example, I have my little sandwich here that I'm making. I'm just going to put the 3 layers together, and I'm going to use some clips to put the layers nicely together. And if I wanted to get as close as possible to the zipper, right? So like when I sew these layers together, right? Maybe the goal is to get really, really close, like very close to the zipper. And that might be more than a 1/4 of an inch, right? Depending on your zipper. So it again depends on the instructions of the pattern and what you're going for. But if you wanted to get really, really close to the teeth of the zipper, you could do this method. So you have it all clipped together, you have the machine ready to go. All right, you have, if you're using the 3mm, that's gonna be 1/8 of an inch. If you use the 2.5mm, it will get even closer to the edge of the zipper. So now instead of butting up my foot to the edge of the fabric, I'm butting it up the left side right to the teeth, okay, like right to the teeth. So then that way, it sews as close as I can possibly get to the teeth of those zippers. So let me show you for reference here. There's my beautiful stitch, and I got as close as I possibly could to that zipper. You see that? So that's going to be like 1/8 of an inch space. So as you can see here, this definitely looks like it's more than a 1/4 of an inch. That looks more like a 1/2, closer to a 1/2 inch. So again, if the pattern called for a 1/4 of an inch, that would be conflicting to the pattern, but just depends again what you're doing. So that's one way of doing that, and this applies to the 3mm and the 2.5mm. Now let me show you how you can do technically the same exact thing with that adjustable zipper foot as well. So just to quickly finish off the foot that we were just using, those hinged zipper feet, the 3mm and 2.5mm, are great for installing zippers. There's a couple extra steps depending on how you're going to use them, but they're awesome. Just don't get into the habit of keeping them on the machine 24/7 and using them for the entirety of the project, because that's not what they're made for. This foot is also phenomenal for top stitching. Getting that consistent 1/8 inch for top stitching is awesome for zippers. So make sure you guys watch part 1 to see that and see your other options for top stitching as well. So now in part 1, I also referenced this foot. This is the adjustable zipper foot, and this might come with some of your TLs depending on which model you have. There's a little green screw back here that you can screw, unscrew and loosen, so then that way you can move it over to the right or to the left. And this little guy is just under a 1/2 inch, so it's like 5/8 inch wide, okay? So keep that in mind too, because it's not a 1/4 inch and it's not a 1/2, but it's more than a 1/4. So I would move it over to the left or to the right accordingly to what I needed. So obviously making sure, but when I tighten it down, that the needle is not gonna hit anything. You can hand crank it so you know nothing's gonna touch anything, so we're good, the clearance is good. I would definitely encourage you to do that. So now when I go to get ready to sew the zipper, this is that same type of technique. I want to sew as close as possible to the zipper. If that's what you're trying to achieve, then this is the foot for you. Remember, I talked about the pros and cons for this foot. This foot doesn't have any sort of spring stability like this foot does. So you see how this one wiggles. This one doesn't have that. This is just a solid piece of metal. So if you have layers here, this is probably not going to be the best foot for this. But for a project like this, where we just got 2 little layers in our zipper, it's going to get the job done. So now what I would do is I would get really close to the zipper, and with this one you have the most control. Since this is a screw in the back and it's adjustable, I have the most control to get right onto those zipper teeth if that's what I was trying to do, okay? So let's sew out a little sample here so you can see just how close Mind you guys, I know that's not what the video is about, but this one would be great for piping as well. If anyone's doing piping, that'd be phenomenal for that. So here is my little stitches. It got super close. You can see this is a very big seam allowance, very, very big. So now let's open it up and see how close it got to the zippers. Look at that. That is insanely close, right? Almost like, does the pull still even work when it's that close? Okay, it does. But it gets exceptionally close. And if that's the goal you're trying to achieve here, then the adjustable zipper foot is perfect for you. And you can still use this for top stitching as well, and allow you to do that. But remember those pros and cons from video number 1. So just to recap what we just did, this is that adjustable zipper foot with that little screw in the back. And this is great for getting really up close to those zippers. You can use it for top stitching. Just the con is that this is one solid piece of metal. So keep that in mind. It's not going to do good with the layers. So now for how I install zippers and how most patterns are written using that 1/4 inch, I have the hinged 1/4 inch foot installed. As you can see here, there is a spring-loaded setting in the back, so it helps it surf over those thicknesses and thin layers as well. And I love this foot. This is great for my quilter, for my bag maker, for whoever. I personally don't like having a guide to the right. We have a video talking about the different 1/4 inch feet. We'll reference that in the description below, so you guys can watch that too, find your best fit for you. But this is what I like to use to install zippers. So when I have my sandwich all ready to go, you know, I have to use a 1/4 inch to put those together, as most patterns call for. And I'm just gonna start stitching, following the edge of that fabric at that 1/4 inch, just like I would. And then I'm going to cut, and as you can see here, those stitches look delicious. That's my nice accurate 1/4 inch. And when I open, it looks something like this. And this is great. I mean, this is awesome. I get to see the tape of the zipper, and most of the time that's kind of a look that we want to go for. Then after this step, once I have my zipper all sewn in place and I'm ready to move on, if you remember in video number 1, this is where I would put that left compensating foot onto the machine, and I would get a beautiful close top stitch to this, and it would be amazing and stunning. So this is a great foot to do constructions for your bags. It's bigger, considering that this is a 1/4 inch and this is a 1/4 inch, right? So total, this foot is about 1/2 inch wide. So compared to those really skinny zipper feet, you know, we're talking something that's a 1/4 inch versus half. This is much more contact. It's covering the feed dogs. It's able to pull the material through the project better. So keep that in mind. This is what I like to do. And all these feet that I referenced here today are on JukiJunkies.com. We'll link them down in the description below. So that way you can get the right tools for your bags and projects in mind. So that way you're ready for success. I hope you guys learned something new today and kind of answered all those questions that are around the zipper feet. In video 1, I did also reference the invisible zipper feet, which I didn't talk about in today's video because those are very application driven. There's not very much like wiggle room with those, so those are meant to be used exactly what they're made for. I also had a comment not too long ago about someone asking me, can you use standard industrial feet on this machine since this is a semi-industrial machine? The answer is no, because industrials have a lot of different things to them, like the 1541 doesn't use the same feet as the 1181, so it's just different. But there are lots of aftermarket options out there that even we have you know, been searching for too for other feet. The most important thing to remember is that this is a high shank semi-industrial machine. So when you do purchase those aftermarket feet, just make sure that it's a high shank and test it out before you obviously just dive into a project, make sure it works. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Lots of things referenced today. Make sure you check out part 1. That's in the description down below for all the other zipper feet too and how to use them and things like that. We're going to reference the 1/4 inch video down below for you guys so you can find your perfect 1/4 inch. And then another good one that David reminded me about was the seam guide video. So if you're somebody who likes using a seam guide, I referenced that magnetic one here today. Watch the video on all the other seam gauges so you can decide what's the best one for you. So thank you guys so much. Make sure you like this video. Comment down below if you learned something new or something new you want to see. Subscribe to our channel, share it with a friend, and make sure you never miss out on our videos that we post every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you soon.